and we should be right here, right now. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is the last night of the Disc Jockey News Virtual Expo, and according to the contract, I have to say we saved the best for last, and I brought you Ben Stowe. Good evening, Ben.
Good evening, John. That's right. It was in the fine print.
right next to the strawberry starburst. Right
yes.
next. Ben, we've been busy this summer. We haven't had a chance to sit down and talk and shoot any of the Tuesday shows. So this is kind of a cool that we were able to pull it together here for the last night of the Expo.
Yeah, it's been a pretty crazy summer, but that's the way I like it, I guess.
Oh. For those of you who are watching out on DJN virtualexpo.com, the player's there, and you can go hover down in the lower right-hand corner, and you'll see the YouTube little icon pop up. Click on that. That'll take you over to the YouTube page. So then you can see the chat area that's on the right, which we've got some folks already in the chat area talking away and such.
Totally ignoring us.
Totally ignoring us. Hopefully KGB is seeing the refresh. Yeah, it's delayed. It's going to be like 30 seconds delay. So we're saying something now, and by the time it gets to you, it wasn't as insightful as it was 30 seconds ago. Okay, they're on the other pages and such. So I think we are all up and running. Yes, I see it everywhere. So
we're still going to think we were just as clever 30 seconds from now. So
that's true. And maybe it's like some things where it gets better with age. So 30 seconds from now, it'll even be better than it was when you said it. That's what we're going to go at.
Maybe we need a tape delay in case I have a wardrobe malfunction or something.
That's true. Although I think it would really be embarrassing in so many ways for that to happen to.
Yeah, nobody wants to see that.
That's something nobody wants to get a piece of that one. No.
I've been hired for a lot of things. Taking off my clothes has not been one of them.
That's very true. I've seen you at a lot of events, and that's one thing I can say I haven't seen you do is.
There's just this one picture that just keeps popping up on Facebook of when I was vacationing in Hawaii, and I made the mistake of hanging around my friend Chuck who lived in Hawaii, and so there's a topless picture of me floating around Facebook, and it's just as bad every time you see it.
Well, yeah, that's one of the things I guess I haven't seen, and I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, don't. You'll need to readjust the white balance on your screen.
Yeah, we are from Minnesota, where the sun only shines for about this long.
It's a tragedy.
Yeah, it only goes about that, and then we're done. Oh, yeah, we got people coming in. I got MJ. I see Mike Chilson's coming. KGB is in there. Ian's in there. We got a lot of people coming in, and thank you guys for watching tonight. If you guys can, go out and share the link to the show on your social media channels. We'd really appreciate that because, again, in Ben's contract, he wants not only the strawberry starburst, but he's wants a lot of people so that he can sing his closing song to him tonight because it's a really special moment for him.
You're making this crap up.
Pretty much. Tonight we're going to be talking speakers, Ben. We've had a lot of people who have been asking about speakers and talking speaker placement, and I think really a lot of this can be attributed to some of the videos we did down at Mobile Beat Las Vegas, where we were talking about the ETX series speakers around the room. Because a lot of guys were looking at that and saying, wow, how can they do that? How can they have these speakers in different places without cancellation and different things like that? So I think we kind of opened up a can of worms by presenting that information from the show.
Well, it's just physics, and the short answer is you can't because every time you fix a problem here, you make a problem somewhere else. And we'll get into, maybe as we answer some of these questions, we'll get into why, sound travels in waves and wavelengths vary by frequency. But obviously we try to make it as good as possible. And we take all the compromises that have to be made and we come up with the best possible results. So while I'm saying the short answer is you can't avoid any cancellation, you can come up with very good results. And everybody got to hear that. And of course, that's what I get paid to do. So,
yeah. Yeah, that's something I think that as you have mentioned many times, the answers depend, and there's so many variables and things, and that's one of the things as DJs we don't want to hear.
I have a feeling I don't want to ruin your show right off the get go, but I have a feeling DJs aren't going to want to hear a few things I have to say tonight. But it's sort of like the ostrich in the sand. Those that want to embrace this and learn it will certainly rise above those who don't.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something I think that has been kind of a theme with when we're talking about training and education, is that those who embrace the training and education can grow and become, take themselves to the next level, and those who don't, not so much. So
Yeah, you can't wish physics away, or I'd have anti-gravity boots or something, So
okay, yeah, just had Mike Chilson was asking if you were going to be at DJ Expo, and I think you are, aren't you, Ben?
I'm not.
Oh,
Oh, I'm
oops,
sorry, Mike.
no, he isn't. My bad. Okay, yes, that's right. I'm doing both. I'm watching the chat room there so I can bring the questions to Ben as we're talking, and then of course then we have our conversation going. So Ben, let's kind of start a little bit and kind of talk about going back to the ETX system that was at Mobile Beat. Now there were some different speakers doing different things towards the audience. Now we had the ones that were up on top, and then we had some down in the front. Kind of walk us through in just a quick little overview of what those speakers, what were being accomplished by those speakers in the different placements.
Well, every speaker has a coverage pattern by design. Typically, your high frequency boxes have horns or some other type of waveguide or hydra or something. But we'll just go with DJs. Typically, use speakers that have horns, and so that's going to give us a fairly defined directional pattern in the horizontal and the vertical plane. And that's good. Rule number one: point the loud part towards the people, and that helps us do that. But it isn't necessarily going to cover everybody. And when you think about this, where we had these hanging, horizontal arrays up there of the loudspeakers, we had 2 loudspeakers in each hang.
Yep.
We had really good coverage of the room, except for the front few rows. And it's one of the bitter ironies, even as I design sound for concert tours and things, that your most expensive seats right up in the front are also the hardest ones to hit with sound. They're outside the coverage pattern of your main arrays.
Mm-hmm.
So the solution is either hang a center array, which is pretty unpopular in depending on the circumstance. But generally what you see is what we did at Mobile Beat, which is to put what we call front fills. And you put them on the downstage edge, or the stage lip, some people would call it. And those are designed to give us coverage in that middle area.
And then now that coverage, now, will that interfere with the listening enjoyment, what have you, of the audience, where the front fill and the top, the line arrays, where they kind of, the sound waves meet? Will there be a noticeable difference or a problem there?
Well, it can. Probably the biggest difference, the biggest challenge is time. That maybe we're 30 milliseconds away from that hanging array, which we might still hear at some seats, but maybe we're only 10 milliseconds away from the front fill. So there's a difference there of 20 milliseconds, which is very noticeable to us. Now we can't travel forwards through time. We can't speed up the hanging arrays. So what we would do is delay the closer speaker. We would delay those front fills back so that the sound arrives time aligned. And we might get into that a little bit. We'll see where the questions go. But we also do that with subwoofers, just to make sure everything is arriving, that we're time aligning the crossover point and everything, that it actually will make your bass tighter, punchier, louder. Anyway, there's lots of reasons to be thinking about those kinds of things too.
Yeah.
I don't think front fills are a very common thing for DJs, though.
Much. I mean, I think there have been a couple of instances where I have been running a show that I would have liked to have had something like that, just because of the way, like a stage. And I'm thinking specifically down in, it was down, I think, a university theater down in the cities.
Okay.
And one of the times I performed there, that I had to have the speakers so wide and so off that they really didn't do the front area as well as I would like. And then the other time we just hooked into their system, which was awesome.
Always nice when you got an engineered system that's permanently installed. But anyway, yeah.
So yeah, not very common. I mean, that's in 20 some years of DJ work. I've had like maybe less than 5 that I would have been like, ooh, that would have been cool.
So front fills are an option, and good to know that you have that option, and just delay them back to your mains. Now, if we have listeners that also do live sound, depending on the venue. And how loud my stage sound is. Sometimes I'll also delay my mains back to the drum set. If my audience can hear the drum set acoustically, not just through the then it's important that I delay everything back to the drum set. You always bring everything back to the slowest sound, because again, we can't move forward through time.
Interesting. So in a situation like that where you've set it now to the drummer who's in the farthest area back, would the lead guitar players, or would they notice it in their monitors, the delay, or would that be just in the front of house sound?
Yeah, I just put the delay in the front of house.
Okay.
Because again, we don't want to create a problem there where they're going to hear it on stage acoustically and then delayed in their monitor. Even just the AD to DA conversion of digital consoles and processing and things can be a concern if you have too much latency. And of course, that mostly now isn't an issue. But
yeah.
And unless the artist wanted it delayed for some reason, I wouldn't delay it without them asking for it. And I've had some weird requests for monitors. I really don't like mixing monitors, so I've done it, but
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. No, that's good. And then of course
biting my tongue, thinking about a national tour that I mixed monitors on, and just saying anyway. So.
Sometimes it's not so much, but that's another story.
Well, you got eight people with with stereo mixes or whatever, makes 16 mixes basically, or 8 stereo mixes from very finely tuned people who are very particular about what they're hearing. I think front of house is much easier. You have one mix, even though one mix is shared by thousands of people. I don't have to do 8 mixes simultaneously. So call me lazy. I just don't like monitors.
That's why they get one mix. You get this mix or you don't. That's it. That's all
right.
You get.
Well, that's just it. The audience really can't complain about the front of house mix. Where believe me, the artists will. You're right off to stage left usually, and the artist can just look over and be like, I need more me. Anyway.
So I'm wondering how far. Yeah, we are definitely live, guys. I'm not sure how far, Ian, we're off on our time thing, because I just replied to you in that time frame. So
there's your latency.
There's the latency. That's right. We need to now time delay, but which one of us is farther back, and then what millisecond seconds is it, and all that. Well, let's bring that sound distribution from speakers. Let's kind of talk about that and how in the DJ realm, that we need to be thinking about our sound and coverage of a room. Because I think you might have a couple of things to show us.
I'll do my best.
I'm sure you will. I've already seen some of the slides. It's like, oh, he's only got 37 slides.
I cheated when you told me one of the things. I grabbed a PowerPoint that I just did a couple weeks ago at ARM DJs, God bless Robbie Britton. I love him. I think he's fantastic. I love all the people that go to that show. And he has kind of a TED Talk format. And I literally found out late the night before, oh, hey, we got 15 minutes. Could you put something together? You bet.
15 minutes.
So,
now Ben,
it was on speaker placement, so I'm going to cheat a little bit and reuse some of those slides.
So Ben, I've worked with you for.
I don't know which ones because I don't have the questions yet. So it is going to be a little bit of fun here.
And I've worked with you for a while. 15 minutes.
Yeah,
that's like nothing, man.
We got through the introduction.
Yeah, we did. I'm just checking to see. Okay, good. So yeah, if you are going to have some questions, please put those into the comments on that YouTube chat, because that's where we can see that. And again, there's a little bit of a delay and such. We've had that each night. It's just that we're trying to do 2 things at once here, so we'll do the best to get to what we can. So Ben, let's talk about a traditional speaker, like a horn-loaded speaker. Now, how is the coverage of that going to differ to a technology that a lot of these speaker companies, recently we have LD Systems that has one, Bose has had one for a while, RCF is coming out with their Evox, which are all touted as line array systems. Now, how is that in the DJ world, the coverage differentiating between the two?
Oh, a good friend of mine said that to his knowledge, he's a loudspeaker engineer, and he said to his knowledge, nobody is actually, no government agency is actually verifying these specifications. And he said if lying on your specs was a crime, there'd be a lot of people in jail. So, being said, they are array systems, and there are pros and cons, and one is not necessarily better than the other. One, and I guess we really could think of them both as point source devices, but for simplicity of the discussion, we'll say that a typical two-way 15-inch horn-loaded speaker is a point source loudspeaker, and something like the LD Systems Maui is a columnar array. It's an array,
Mm-hmm.
and in essence, the way that arrays work is the summation of drivers, the interaction of many drivers together. And like we talked about in our line array show, the perfect line array is infinitely small and infinitely long at the same time,
Yeah.
you know? And while, it just doesn't really exist. So there has to be some compromises that you make, but there's pros and cons. You get some pros and you get some cons. Here it is in a nutshell. And we're really oversimplifying this. And maybe I'll try to come up with some visual examples that might be meaningful. But in a point source sense, every time we double the distance from the loudspeaker, we lose 6 decibels, or the equivalent of 4 times our amplifier power. In an array, we only lose 3 dB. So they tend to lose less over distance, but that is very frequency specific. And so they will only behave like an array to a certain frequency based on the number and size of the drivers. And there's a lot of physics. So just sticking a bunch of drivers in a row doesn't solve all your problems. It creates some too. And now you might say, well, geez, Ben, you really sound like you're against these things. No, not at all. I just want people to understand that there isn't a magic bean here. Again, like we said early in the show, it's a series of compromises. Yeah. And anytime you fix a problem, you create a problem. Just for fun, let me do this. This is a slide. Let's see if we can do this. This is a slide that I did on line arrays. Do you see that?
No, you got to share the screen.
Oh, didn't I? Oh, we got to click the start button. Look at that. How about that?
Hang on, it's gonna load, and then I'm gonna switch this over to. There we go. So everyone can see your full screen. So.
All right, we're doing this live, so
yeah, exactly. So this usually we cut away and then we go have a pop, a soda, a Coke, whatever it is, and then we come back.
Yeah, depending on what part of the country you live in.
Exactly.
All right. So do you see the slide on your screen?
Yes. System tuning.
Says system tuning. Okay. What this shows is a couple of screenshots from a program called LAPS, which very cleverly stands for Line Array Prediction Software. And what we can see in here is the various pieces to the puzzle, as it were. We'll see that there are different boxes in the array. There are different angles of the boxes in the array, and there are different shadings, meaning levels of each box. And then, of course, we see the predictable results down below, and we can see results for the main floor and then our 2 balconies. To the right, we can see a picture of our rig with the red diamond indicating center of gravity and all kinds of fun stuff. Trim height, 72 feet at the top of the rig, so on and so forth. But as we look at this screen, we now can see a rendering, as it were, of the output. And while the array does give us really pretty good coverage, as you can see, on the bottom there, it's there are compromises and there's things you have to give up for that. And this is using a very long, very expensive array. So again, just sort of to bear in mind that putting 6 or 8 2-inch drivers or 3-inch drivers in a row doesn't solve every problem acoustically, and it may or may not be the right solution. And the answer to whether it is or isn't is probably much more complicated than we have time for.
Sure.
So there you go. There's the first of the slides that I took out of that PowerPoint.
There we go. Let's flip this back on. So the coverage is obviously a big difference between the two. So and most DJs don't really get into the array unless we are running something that like the Bose or what have you that have that. So let's look at speaker placement in a room now and get the best sound. I think you and Mike Stowe and I had that conversation about subwoofers and placing of subwoofers in a room a little bit. So how does the placement of our speakers, our basically our top cabinets and the subwoofers, I mean, should they be done differently in most applications, or should they be out front, or what would your recommendation be?
Yes.
Okay, great. That was a quick one.
It depends.
I was so looking for that when I put together that little teaser video today. I was so looking for it depends quote from you, and I looked for 20 minutes and I could not find, because I found 3 shows you didn't say it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. It
really
was
slacking. All right. Well, let me share my screen again, and let's talk a little bit about coverage. And I'm going to talk, I think, primarily about high-frequency boxes. And then I want to show you something cool. I'm shooting from the hip here, but
yeah. No.
let's do this. Let's see. Share screen. Let's do this. Okay, you see that?
There we are.
Okay.
Directivity and beam width.
Perfect. All right. So we talked about the horn that we would place, around a high frequency driver, but we achieved directivity off the cone type woofer much higher than the crossover point because of this phenomenon called beaming. And this occurs when the directivity of the pattern occurs when the wavelength approaches and becomes smaller than the diameter of the driver's cone.
Okay.
Now, bearing in mind that you have the speed of sound at approximately 1,128 feet per second for most of our indoor applications. It varies by temperature and humidity and whatever. So take that and then take wavelength. And if we take wavelength divided by time, we'll get frequency. If we take time divided by frequency of wave, I knew I wasn't right. I'm looking at this beam width chart as I'm trying to do different math in my head. So to get wavelength, we take time divided by frequency. Anyway, so as we look at the chart here, we see that for a woofer diameter of 15 inches, that's going to be about 900 hertz. 900 hertz is going to be about 15 inches. And again, let's look at the way this works. If we take the speed of sound to 1,128 feet per second, and we divide that by 1 kilohertz or 1,000 hertz, we're going to end up with about 1.13 feet. So you can see how just working with some easy math that sort of comes into play. And here what we see is I'm pointing at the screen as though you can see me.
Yeah. No, we can actually see you, and we see the screen. So you're in the corner there.
Oh, good. All right.
It's to your upper right, I think, is what it would be. So if you point, just
look while I'm trying to do 2 different math problems at the same time.
Yeah, so they can see you being confused and pulling the calculator out and.
Look, man, no hands, no brains. All right. So as we look here, we see 20 to 360 degrees in the vertical plane. And then we see 20 to 20,000 hertz in the horizontal plane. In this case, this box is a 60 by 60 box. So what we see is that at this line here, that's 60 degrees coverage. And we should see the same coverage vertically as we do horizontally. And we see that for a little bit, particularly from 1,000 hertz up to about 10,000 hertz, it's pretty close to 60 by 60. With the exception of that little bump there in the middle. And you'll notice the bump is not the same in the horizontal and the vertical. Again, we just can't make perfect. This is actually a very good loudspeaker. You can't make perfect. But let's take a note right here is where that red arrow is. That's where the beaming effect starts to take place. And below that, the pattern starts to explode into a more of a spherical pattern, a 360-degree pattern off that loudspeaker. So that's how we can achieve some directivity even without having physical boundaries for our cone-type woofers. And let's take a look at that in real life. Now, bearing in mind, I'm going to show you something really cool in a minute here. Mm-hmm. The pictures that you're seeing here were generated by a software we use when we engineer systems called Ease. And it's expensive and it's really good. The one I'm going to show you in a minute, I'm going to show you a poor man's version of this that's free. Everybody can have it, and I urge you, if you really get into this kind of thing, you can just play with it to your heart's content, and it's pretty cool. You'll learn a lot about physics. It's not nearly as precise as Ease. It doesn't have nearly the flexibility of Ease, but nonetheless, it's a really good case study in acoustics. Ease allows us to take a specific loudspeaker at a specific point and measure it at specific frequencies, bearing in mind the coefficients of surfaces it might interact with and other drivers and all kinds of fun things. But that's for another day. Mm-hmm. What we see looking overhead is we have the same 60-degree loudspeaker, and the color bands represent loudness at 1 kilohertz. We're only measuring 1,000 hertz here, okay? Now this black line signifies where my 60-degree pattern would be. So we can see that the speaker is certainly louder within 60 degrees, but and you can see it sort of trailing off outside of 60 degrees, but it does make sound outside of 60 degrees. Typically, the magic number is -6 dB for determining where a pattern is.
Okay.
Now, let's change this to 500 hertz, and we can see the difference. Same loudspeaker. See the difference between 1 kilohertz and 500 hertz? It's making a lot more sound, what we would say off-axis. It's making a lot more sound outside of 60 degrees because it's well below the beaming frequency of that 15-inch driver. We call it the break frequency. So it's starting to really explode into a spherical pattern. And this is where kind of one of the common myths is that people say, well, high frequency is directional, bass is not. That's not really true. But it's based on this truth of the way these typical boxes are engineered.
Gotcha.
Because directionalizing bass requires bigger boundaries, giant cement walls, or whatever. But we can also do it with multiple drivers, and that brings us into line array. So now let's see. Let's do this. I had to look and see what my slides were.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take 2 of these speakers, and we're going to put them side by side. And we see this very pretty looking Rorschach pattern. But acoustically, it's not all that great. Now, mind you, this is only at 1,000 hertz. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
This will change if we change frequencies. So that's important to note. Moving the speakers apart 5 feet, and our pattern changes to this. Moving them apart to 10 feet, and our pattern changes to this. Again, only at 1 kilohertz. And bear in mind, again, like we said, that you've got time divided by frequency as your wavelength. So
Ben, as we're looking at this image compared to, like, if you could go back to the last image.
This one?
Yep, that one and that one. Now the yellow is a louder sound?
Yes, that's correct.
And the red is now, in essence, we're seeing a tiny bit of canceling between the 2 speakers. Is that what I'm seeing?
That's exactly what you're seeing. You're seeing both what we call power alleys, where the big yellow bands are, and quite literally moving across those bands laterally on the dance floor, you would hear a substantial difference at 1 kilohertz. Anyway, some fun case studies there.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we have, if anything fun. Okay, yeah. So now we talked a little bit about the interaction of waves and the fact that it's frequency specific, and that's enough to really melt your brain. So let's go back to simple here. Rule number 1, point the loud part towards the people.
And ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching for 25 minutes, and there it is. There's your answer. All right.
There are 3 rules of pro audio, John. Rule number 1, make sound. Rule number 2, continue to make sound. And rule number 3, when possible, make good sound. So
I noticed that was an interesting order. It wasn't the make good sound right away.
Again, I guess some sound is better than no sound. I don't know. But I think you should always strive to make good sound.
Yeah.
That's obviously it. So what we see here in this brown square is our dance floor. And here we have 2, we'll just say the regular 60-degree tops, okay? And we can see that putting them where we did and aiming them straight ahead, we missed a lot of our dance floor. One answer here might be those front fills we talked about. Or another answer might be to toe them in slightly. Now, this gets into some sticky area, and if there's any real engineers watching out there, they might want to take this right to 4th year physics. Well, okay, just hold it. We have to cover the area, and we are going to have some interaction with the waves, but it's certainly better than having no sound out there at all.
Right.
Having bodies out there will break it up a little bit, kind of work in our favor. Now that's a 60-degree pattern. If we change this to a 90-degree pattern, towing them in slightly is going to give us a lot better coverage on the dance floor.
Right.
And there's all kinds of things. In an ideal world, we would actually put the boxes together toe them 90 degrees apart, and then put like a 3 millisecond delay on one box. It would actually be really pretty smooth coverage.
How many milliseconds? I was thinking about this when you mentioned it earlier. How many milliseconds difference does it before you really start to pick that up?
I'm told it's about 7.
Okay.
That's, again, I'm not an audiologist, but I'm told about 7 milliseconds seems to be where it starts to matter for people.
Okay.
All right. So now that we just, through that, let me show you something else that's pretty cool. And I'm going to do this. Let's see, maybe. Nope. Sorry.
Oh, that's cool.
Let's do this. All right. You see like a green glowing orb there?
There we go. Yes.
This is a free Java applet from Falstad. Go to falstad.com/interference, and it's a free applet. And what we see here, and we're going to segue right into subwoofers here. What we see is the brighter the color, the louder. This doesn't give us nearly the detail or the resolution that Ease does, but this is free. Okay.
Sure.
You also don't get to choose what speaker you have and where they are, any of that nonsense. We're dealing with single frequency, no such fun as Fourier's complex sine and anything like that. Sorry, but once again, it's free. All right. So for the sake of fun, let's say that we have we have 2 subwoofers out here, and we're measuring at 79 hertz, as we can see on the bottom here.
Mm-hmm.
The wavelength for 71 hertz is 171.7 inches, and right now we have no spacing between the speakers and no phase shift. So let's start to separate these speakers a bit, and you'll notice that as we start to separate them, the green actually starts to go away. We actually start to lose bass just by separating these speakers a little bit. See that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how well that's translating in real time, but and as we start to move them away, we can see the pattern really starts to change. So in essence, we have directionalized that low frequency. See there?
Yep. I'm just moved it down a little bit so people could see the 2 dots a little bit better.
Okay, yeah, the 2 dots represent our loudspeakers. Now, and by the way, just for fun, if we changed phase, let's see, I have to do this. Look what happens if we change phase. I mean, we can do all kinds of fun stuff, right?
If only a speaker manufacturer had a set where you could, send that bass directional.
You mean like the Electro Voice cardioid setting?
Oh, wait, we've talked about.
Nice plug. Well, it's done exactly this way. It's done with time and phase, or 180-degree phase, basically, and then re-time aligning the boxes, because now you have one driver facing forward, one driver facing back. But it's not magic; it's just physics. But it's really nice that they've made it quite literally a button push. All right.
So Ben, hang on before you leave this page. Now, one of the things.
I'm not going to leave this page. I'm going to go into something else. But go ahead.
Okay, so put them back together if you would, please, again. So they're like in essence stacked. If we'd be stacking them. So we're at a stacked. Now, when we were at NAMM this year, I was talking to 2 different speaker manufacturers, and they were suggesting that. And you and I've had the conversation about the wavelength of bass, and they were suggesting that if we could spread the 2 speakers out beyond the wavelength of the bass signal, so they would be, I think, about 12 feet apart is what we were thinking. 12 to 15 is what we were mentioning. That they would actually be able to get more bass sound by putting those subwoofers about that far apart. Now, what will that show us when we go? Because I saw you had it up to like about 6 feet apart. What happens when we go farther?
Well, okay, so our wavelength here is 171 inches. So that's, about 14 feet, give or take? Okay, I don't do math well in my head, believe it or not. I know you'd think a guy wearing a T-shirt like this could, but I really don't. So who needs brains if you have batteries, right?
Yeah, we're a little over 15 feet, so.
So let's go to about exactly that, and we can see that actually we have some cancellation here. We have a little bit more here, and I would have to disagree with them.
Wow, I mean it's really showing that isn't a
Now, if we could add some delay, that would change things. Uh, there are some things that we could do if we had more DSP where we could do that. But
Mm-hmm. But
and
most,
now, mind you, that's at 79 hertz. As we continue to move out, we'll see what happens here. But you can see the clear difference. And there's a lot of things not being taken into consideration here. One is boundaries. This is, I guess, in an anechoic environment, all the way down to 0 hertz. But, because it's just purely based on math. That, if we had boundaries from walls and that sort of thing. And that's what I want to show now,
mm-hmm.
is placement of a sub. Now, the way that this works is if we pretend that there's a line right down the middle of the screen, and we're only going to look at the right dot, okay?
Okay.
What we see is right now, let's put the speaker right against the wall.
Okay.
And we have a nice big green area, good, smooth, solid bass coming out. It's actually reflecting off the wall back into the pattern at 0 degree phase. So we're getting nice summation, boundary loading. Maybe, we would call this half space, or against the floor on the wall, we'd call it quarter space. Anyway, now as we move it away from the wall, look at this. Let's go right about here, just for fun, because this is right about 8 feet, which is pretty much where they always stick the DJ, right? Your rig ends up being about 8 feet out from the wall.
Sure.
You have less space. If you look, let's see, can you see the word interference applet?
I've got it, so it's just off the screen.
Okay.
We've
I was
got
going to
it.
just use that as a point of reference.
Yeah, they can see the edge of that. Yes.
Okay, so pick a spot, and you can see that we actually have more bass with the speaker further away than if we move the speaker closer because of cancellation. We have bass well beyond the T, but if we move the speaker closer to the T in applet, we actually have less bass there because we have cancellation from that wall.
And in this particular case, you're talking about having a wall going right down the middle of the screen. So now you'd see that little. We don't have a way to model a wall, so we just have to pretend that the other speaker is not there and that there's a wall in the middle of the screen. Which right now that kind of green line would represent the
Correct.
area, the location of the wall. So we're really looking at sending sound to the right in this this example. I want to
now,
make sure.
to the point of what you were saying about the manufacturers, you can see as we move away from the wall, we start to get more bass again because we don't have the cancellation effect. See that?
Mm-hmm.
So, the answer really to everything is it depends, right? There's always more than one factor.
Yeah.
But that's something to bear in mind. This is why maybe a cardioid setting would be so valuable. Or why we maybe would want our speaker back by the wall in the corner and then time align our tops, put a delay on our tops to go back. Those are strong considerations.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is great. This is now just for fun. Let's do this. Let's put these speakers here, and now we're at 79 hertz. Let's change the frequency. You see what happens to the pattern.
Wow.
So it's very frequency dependent. Of course, music has lots of frequencies. We have to sort of find some compromises here. And then, if we go in here and start to adjust phase, you start getting some real fun stuff happening, But it gives you a really good sense of why this can be so confounding and frustrating at times for people.
I guess that would really explain a lot of the dead spots that you may have with some frequencies in a room when you're setting up.
Well, absolutely. We call that room moding. And that's exactly what you can have. You could have something that looks like this on the screen with one subwoofer simply because of cancellation from the wall, for example. Now, right now, I happen to be at 243 hertz, but that's a fairly low frequency, too. It's not subwoofer frequency, but, that's certainly right in there, right in the meat of things. We get down here right about 100 hertz, typical crossover point for most sub. We could have all kinds of weird stuff happening.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're only dealing with one wall here too. So we can go kind of nuts with this and have a lot of fun.
What would the vocal range, frequency for a vocal range, we were to take it up and do a model of that, what would that be?
I would say 400 to 4 kilohertz, really typically. Let's say now. I mean, that's not to say that that's the end all save all for deep bass, baritone, whatever. But
Hmm.
just kind of that's a good meat and potatoes. 400 to 2K, maybe even really more specifically. But I'd say 400 to 4K.
Sure.
You want to have some of those hard consonants and some of the shape of your sounds. So
Certainly.
here we are at 400 hertz. What do we want to see here? Speaker separation.
So we get a lot of different, basically canceled zones as you're going across like that.
Yeah. Now here again, anything that breaks up the wavelength is gonna, people, that's gonna break up those wavelengths, and people are great. They're like walking acoustic treatment.
Sure.
They're awesome. The more people, the better. So play good music, and your sound will sound better. Because people will dance. But no, nobody laughed. Okay.
No, no. I'm sorry. The crowd is still trying to figure out when we started out and that line array thing. Mike Chilson had a question about sub sound. Why a subwoofer would sound louder this? I don't think this can. Maybe it can, but why it sounds louder behind it than it does in front of it? Can this demonstrate that?
Let's try it. Let's go down here in the 80s. I think our time delay is too great to ask him exactly, what his distance is. But let's say
He did put that in there, Ben, about
Yeah.
4 or 5 feet from the wall.
Well, ironically, I settled on 48 inches. So, Michael, it's like I read your mind.
30 seconds ago, or was
Yeah,
it 30 seconds from now?
Your mind. That's how good I am. All right. Take a look here at our imaginary wall right down the middle between the two dots, and we can see it's much brighter green there than it is out in front. And one is probably a factor of distance. You're closer to it. You're probably not standing 4 feet in front of it, as opposed to where you would be somewhere within 4 feet behind it. But also, remember, we got some cancellation going on out front here at certain frequencies. And as we change the frequency, you can see that. I mean, look, I get up here to 150 hertz. Look what happens. Like, as the frequency gets lower, the wavelength gets longer. And it's always about that thing, that wavelength equals time divided by frequency. So, we get up here where we get some punch, and it really is noticeable. Look at that.
Interesting.
Now, my arrays are crossed over at 90, so my subs don't start working until 90. So it's very important for me to time align those arrays hanging way over here to the subs that are down in front of the stage. Maybe very important for me, because what we're not looking at here is the interaction between those boxes. And if I don't time align them, it really costs me in the bass department.
Interesting.
Yeah. And actually, just for fun, how I do it is I actually invert the polarity of my subs, and I time align until I see maximum cancellation. So I go until I use SMART is the name of the software, SMART, and I actually look to see the most reduction at my frequency that I'm measuring, usually about 78 hertz or so. And once I find that, I know that I have the best time alignment for cancellation. Then I flip the polarity back around on my subs, and it's right in your face, man. It's tight, punchy, loud. It's gorgeous.
Interesting.
I actually got a compliment on that from a touring act I worked with last weekend. He said, "I love tight, punchy bass." I said, "Thanks for dialing that in." I said, "It's my job, That's what right." So, anyway,
Yeah.
So Michael, if you have a meter, and I suspect you do, and if you don't, well, I'd sure be happy to sell you one. If you have a meter, it would be worth taking some measurements, moving your speakers around, taking some measurements. Even better is some kind of a spectral, analyzer that you can look at response by frequency. You'll see some really cool things. You'll start to see the math in the real world.
Yeah.
And that's when it really, I think, comes alive for all of us.
Yeah. Mike had asked if you could maybe take that out to about 8 feet from the wall again for him.
He's kind of needy, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. He is pretty demanding. There, it's about right there. And
And
then,
let's see, frequency at, let's say, frequency at about, 80, 78 hertz?
yeah, somewhere in that ballpark. And he was also wondering what that meter would run price wise.
About $50 for a decent one, about
Mm-hmm.
$50. Let's see, I think,
So at about it's 80 hertz. Now you're looking at about 13 feet out there, it looks like.
well, I'm trying to think of this in my head because we actually have two speakers going here and our imaginary wall.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So you need to be 100 and
We might have to have double the distance, actually.
192 inches
You
would
know what?
get.
And for anybody that's smack talking me quietly right now, hey, I don't use the free app, okay? So
Yeah. So yeah, you need to be at 100 like 192. Yeah, inches wide. That would be 8 feet from our wall, which would be represented by that green hue in the middle.
Yep, there you go. So we got pretty whopping cancellation here, and we're definitely affecting the shape of our pattern here. Again, making a lot of assumptions about the app. Michael, I know you're a pretty smart guy. I'd grab this thing and play with it all night, just go nuts. Again, it's free. So,
Wow, that sounds like a boring date night, if you know what I'm saying.
hey, you don't know how you don't even know.
I don't think I want to, Ben.
How do you think I met my wife?
Yeah, I'm sure. Here, look at this app I could show you, honey.
Yeah, right. She threatened to log in tonight and ask when I was coming home. So
Yeah, I haven't seen her. I've been kind of watching.
yeah, she threatened. So
Oh,
I
geez.
did just get off the road after 3 days on the road. So.
Yeah, you've been
I
out.
literally got home at 5 o'clock. So a couple hours to do this. But what other questions we got?
The guys are pretty much kind of listening and following along. So we haven't gotten too terribly much any more here from the crew. But let's. I know Michael had mentioned the long room and how to set speakers up in a long room.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've talked about that a little bit in some of our other episodes where we talked about especially the concept of the ETX having that ability to be put on a delay.
Yeah, get the speakers up high if you can. Tilt them down. The ETX does tilt mount. It also has fly kits. It's not the only answer. It's just a nice, convenient plug for them. But get the speaker up high, angle that horn. That makes that pattern really work to your advantage. Where it's like angles in football. And then if we need what we maybe would call like a delay ring, then we do that. And again, you back time this speaker to this one so that the sound arrives at the same time.
And now I know in the ETX, of course, they have that in there. But now, are there I don't want to say mechanical, but like a processor of something that would allow you to put that into your system? You can set it fairly easily for the delay.
Absolutely. There's a lot of them out there. A couple quick, easy ones. DBX Drive Rack, one, both come to mind. Both will do that with powered or passive box. Again, the only difference there is where the amp is. And most of these now, you can just put the delay in feet or meters if that's your pleasure. You don't have to know that it's 0.89 milliseconds a foot at 72 degrees Fahrenheit or something.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually put in the temperature and then the distance in feet, and it will do the calculation for you automatically.
Wow.
It really takes all the fun out of everything,
Yeah, for those of us who like, simple and is foolproof as possible, that sounds appealing.
The delay settings on my amplifiers, which use EV Iris, FIR processing on board. And the nice thing there is that I can be back at front of house connected to my amp racks by Ethernet and making these adjustments to all the amps, in groups or individually or whatever I need to do. But that is in feet or milliseconds or microseconds or samples. I mean, I've got a lot of very precise options. But the DC1, if anybody wants that level of processing power without paying that kind of crazy price, the EV has what's called the DX46, which would sort of be the next step up from the DC1. It looks a lot like a DC1 and it functions like one, but it does have FIR processing on board and it is Iris enabled and you can run Ethernet to it. So maybe that's a good middle ground if somebody's doing kind of some light production work and they have acts that are control at front of house and need that level of control.
Sure. And I could even see in some instances where you are a higher end wedding person, and that's one of the things you could be selling in that long, ugly room, is saying that I can, get my system so it will sound, be time aligned for that room, and everything will be basically on. You're not going to have guests who are hearing the delay and the things, because I don't know if the whole concept of audio fatigue is real or not when it comes to listening to things that are off like that. But
oh yeah,
I feel like
yes. I think you're absolutely right, John. Again, separating the cream from the crop, that there's so many ways that DJs differentiate themselves, and I think good audio certainly should be one of them. I think most people out there have experienced bad audio. Many people out there have experienced bad audio from a DJ, and they might be afraid that's what they're going to get. There are people in our industry who are working very hard to combat some of the public perception of DJs and that sort of thing, and doing a really good job to lift up the industry. This is one of those ways, and I think that's an intelligent conversation with the client. And I see it on the forums. I mean, I think I've seen everything on the forums. People say, well, clients don't know the difference. Bull.
Yeah.
Maybe some don't care, but to generalize clients and say clients don't know the difference, that's bull. Because believe me, mine do.
Oh, yeah.
And there's now you say, well, yeah, you work with nationally touring acts. Listen, but the acts are concerned about the ticket holders, and the ticket holders are the same people who are guests at your weddings.
For sure. And you think about it, the speakers that the average person can now go buy, some of those sound so incredibly good compared to what you and I could buy when we were teenagers, that really it's raised the bar for what we need to be able to do, because we have to sound better than that little Bluetooth stereo that we just bought at the big box store that, really for $200 sounds pretty awesome.
Well, no question. And there was a gentleman who thanked me on Facebook the other day who said he's actually getting more gigs because of sound. And I believe him.
Yeah.
I don't know why he would make that up. I think clients do notice, even if they don't know what they notice, even if they don't know the physics of what they notice, they just say, well, this guy just sounds better. I think that's all part of the overall experience. If you go to a restaurant and the food is good, but the atmosphere is bad, you still leave with a bad impression. If the food smells bad, the food doesn't taste so good. So if you're a good entertainer and your sound is bad, I think that has to leave some part of an impression with the client. If everything is good, that just elevates the whole package. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, no, I would agree. So kind of stepping a half step back here, we were talking about, of course, the sub placement and putting it up against the wall. And a couple of the guys had mentioned that that's something that they prefer to do. Now, if we're putting that subwoofer back, anywhere beyond 4 feet behind those tops, really we should be now concerned also about that delay, and really should be taking that into account, shouldn't we?
Absolutely. 2 reasons. One is psychoacoustics. Now you don't have you don't have any speech down in the subwoofer range or anything like that. So we don't have to worry about things like STIPA and RASTI and speech intelligibility metrics. But like I said, you're going to compromise your bass, because even hertz, I'm picking one here, 100 hertz crossover point, that doesn't mean that this stops making sound at 100 hertz and this only makes sound up to 100 hertz. There's a crossover between those frequencies. We did a show on that. You can go back and watch it. So that is very important, to have that time aligned, to have all that sound coming out together. It's going to improve the overall quality of the sound. And
then they'll be able to put those speakers, again, as Mike Dussault had mentioned in our video with him, is that having those subs up against or near the wall is really, because then you're able to get that backwards bounce and the forward projection and really getting it all going out towards the gas.
Funny you mentioned that. I'm going to share one more screen with you. I just realized, just remembered I have this screen.
Yeah.
Let's see. Blah, 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 blah. Oops.
Questions.
Questions. Hey, yes.
Hey, we're to the question part.
I have a question. What was that slide you just blew past? All right. So what we see here is my sub against the wall, the blue line, and then I see my top in the red line, and we see this time difference, and there, just ever so conveniently, I have a menu picture of the ETX, and I have a DC1, and again, the DX46 looks just like it, shown down below. Now, I don't mean to be shilling for Electro Voice. I do think they make an amazing product, and I love them. But they're not the only option out there. There are other choices, like I said, Drive Rack, and I think the new JBL. Now Mike's going to get mad that I actually mentioned his competitors, but I think JBL's new SRX 800 has delay and whatnot built in too.
I believe so. I think I remember hearing about that when we were.
Just to be fair,
Yep.
but I'll make Mike feel better by saying, I own an EV line array, and that costs something close to like what the space shuttle cost or something. I don't know. So my grandchildren will be paying for it.
What's this monthly bill from Evie? Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's Grandpa Ben's sound system.
Exactly.
The one he's got at the nursing home right now.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I would be very popular in the nursing home. You wouldn't need your hearing aid.
So in the picture that we're looking at now, with the delay on those front speakers, now we're getting the sound at that point. Now, and let's just say that subwoofer's 8 feet behind those tops.
Yep, that's a good measurement.
So now roughly about 8 feet in front, now we're even. Now, if I go another 30 feet beyond that, will those wavelengths be together, or will, because the bass may travel at a different speed than the tops, is there a time out there in space where they don't sound together again?
Boy, there's a lot of questions in that. Let me break them apart into 3 questions. One, sound travels at the same speed regardless of the frequency.
Okay.
So, again, it's dependent on temperature and dependent on humidity, but not frequency. Sound travels at, again, we'll ballpark at 1,128 feet per second in an average indoor environment for temperature and humidity. So, no, in that sense. Now, if you move left to right between the sub and the top, of course, the distance changes very slightly.
Okay.
If we move directly in front of the top, we're a little bit further from the sub and vice versa. Close counts here, because you cannot, without having, 1,000 speakers, you just can't do it any other way.
Right.
So you go for, you can never get perfect. We go for a really good compromise.
Yep, I got that.
So in this case, since I have 1 sub and 2 tops, I would pick a middle point, and I would just have to accept some loss. But if I went to 1 top, as I got closer to the other top, it would be much more off.
Gotcha.
And you know what? I've said this. I lean heavily on the technology around me. I use programs like Smart and those sorts of things, and I use Laps and all these fantastic tools. But nothing beats your ear. Does it sound better? Yes or no? Take a listen. If you like the way it sounds and you have good hearing, then I had to put that qualifier in there.
Yeah. So Ben, as we're looking at this picture, then that would be more of a recommended. Say if this was our room, the white was our full room. Maybe it's a longer room than this, what have you. But if this was my DJ setup, subs and the 2 tops, I would be better than putting my table off to the left or to the right rather than right in the center, as we typically would think a DJ table, because I'd be getting in the way of my subwoofer in that case. Is that correct?
Not really. Those wavelengths are long, and you're going to get it no matter where you're at. I mean, if you're worried about your own headache, you're going to get it no matter where you are.
Okay.
Because it's going to come out in a pretty rounded pattern. I maybe wouldn't sit right in front of it, yeah. But here again, because the wavelengths are so long, we could move that sub really, to one side or the other a little bit and not have too big a compromise.
Now, if you would move it to outside, let's say we were going to take it to the far left or the far right corner, now we're going to have that time delay issue, especially with the far speaker.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I don't think I would do that. You would gain some boundary loading from the corner, but I think you would create other challenges for yourself, so I wouldn't do that.
Interesting.
Unless I was set up in the corner as a DJ. If I was set up close to the corner, I might stick the sub in the corner. And then just, again, compromises, close counts here,
Ben, you remember there was a question you and I were talking about last week when we talked about doing this show that you probably didn't want to go tackle?
No, what's that?
From Mike Chilson. So what are Ben's thoughts on the Bose F1?
I haven't read much about it.
Yeah, we haven't seen much about it, but they look intriguing. But I don't know. I went and I played and I touched them a little bit, and I personally would like to get the highs up higher than what they're showing from that system. And I think there's some limitations with it that once they can do some changes with that, I think it'll be a better, more usable thing for DJs.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of options for columnar arrays out there. Renkus Hines, Maui from LD Systems, Evox from RCF, and there's more coming from other manufacturers. If you like it, if it sounds good to you, then who am I to tell you? But it wouldn't probably be for me.
Yeah, as I looked at it and listened to it, I really thought it was the Bose getting back to the 802 concept, where they have a little bit more, can do a little bit more than they could with the L system. But again, as I'm standing next to it, I'm not a tall guy, but I can cover the whole speaker. So, you get three of us standing in front, and that's just, and we've talked about that in the past, wanting to get that horn or the speaker up above the heads. So it'll be interesting as they're getting out there and people are using them to hear what their thoughts are on those.
Well, absolutely. We've said it a couple times here, wavelength equals time divided by frequency. So that means as the higher frequency, the wavelengths get smaller, and they're not going to penetrate as well. They're going to get absorbed and blocked by people. So I think it's important. That's, again, one of the reasons if you can get the rig up high and pointed down towards the people, you're going to do yourself a lot of favors.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely something in that realm of the Bose where I think the users are going to find that to be something that they want to really work with or fix or somehow work around that to get that up so it can be directed to the guests and such. Good stuff, Ben. I don't think we covered half the ground we initially were talking about, though.
Well, what did we forget?
Well, I don't know if we forgot anything, but I think when we were talking about our different directions and things, we were kind of bouncing through ideas, and the other 74 slides you sent me are still sitting here on the computer.
Well, I was just kind of shotgunning because I really, you said this was going to be live questions, and so I wanted to, having just got back in town an hour and a half before we started shooting, I wanted to just kind of say, hey, just in case if I need to call up this slide, here's some
exactly. We should have it between our two computers. We'll have it there. So
some pre-prepared stuff I have, So
we are at 9:02. It is time to wrap things up.
Yes, it is.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions or anything, you can put those in the comments down below this video on YouTube. You can go out to Facebook. We have a Tuesday Night with Ben Stowe Facebook page. Go out there, like the page. Put your questions on that, and we will do the best to be answering. We're going to be getting back to a regular schedule with the Tuesday night shows once Ben stops traveling, and once I'm stop traveling. Well, that's not going to happen, but we're going to try it this fall, I think, because
more than I am right now.
Yeah, that's about it. It's been a busy summer, and we've got a couple of shows coming up. But hopefully, once we get into September, we'll be back on a regular schedule. But we appreciate you watching tonight. Again, if you have questions, you can always go out to out on Twitter, and you can use a hashtag. What was it? Hashtag. What did we have there, Ben?
I think it was hashtag NLFX Ben.
Yeah, NLFX Ben. So you can always go.
Tuesday Night Ben. I don't know. Make hashtag hash brown. I don't know.
Let's go out to Facebook. It's been so long since we've done the hashtag on. Because we put up the Facebook group, and that's been kind of a cool little.
Yeah, I do have something to show you, by the way.
Oh yeah, what?
So working with my friend Andy Bartlett, who's a bigger nerd than me, believe it or not. Like super geek, we are beginning to we're going to get rid of this like 1970s backdrop, and we're going to, in preparation for the new concept and new show that we've been talking about, kind of building a new set. We've got all kinds of things that you, the viewers, have sent me, and I love them, and I keep them. They're in my office. My office is getting overrun, but I love them. So I said, we're going to do these justice. We're gonna like build a set.
Nice.
And they include all the things, and so we got all kinds of fun stuff that people have sent. And actually, as I'm looking at this, it just occurred to me that all three things are clocks, which maybe makes me think that maybe we run a little long sometimes. So people are like, hey, we're going to surround him with clocks so he knows that. Shut up.
Oh, maybe there's a little thing to that.
Except for this one. This one I got at a trade show. Customer brought it, and it rode home on top of a pallet. And I just want to know, I would love to have seen the looks in the shipping terminals as this thing went from giant Darth Vader on top of a pallet,
Oh, that'd be funny. People would be like,
so awesome.
Be careful, don't touch that.
He's a Sith Lord.
He'll mess us up. Oh, Great stuff. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. If you're watching this on the djvirtualexpo.com page, all you need to do is go there and do a hard refresh of the page. The Tonight Show, which is some of the things from Infocom, it's out there, so you can take a look at that. Otherwise, we thank you very much. Go to the Facebook page, put your questions there. I'm John Young with the Disc Jockey News TV, and this is Ben Stowe from NLFX Pro. We'll see you around. Thank you much. Good night.